great box full of all the components you need to get started in flying model rockets. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and today I'm going to talk about flying rocket engines, and I thought we'll have a close look at one of these starter sets. Now, a starter set is, as it suggests, a great box full of all the components you need, or most of the components, to get started in flying model rockets. Okay, so on the back it'll show you what's included. So you see it comes with a basic rocket, and then you've got the launch pad with the legs there. So there's 3 legs, so it's a tripod type arrangement. There's a metal disc just here, which is called the blast plate. So obviously the blast plate redirects the power of the rocket so they can propel the rocket up without melting anything underneath it. There's a controller here. That's for safety as well as igniting the engine. You've got the parachute. What else is there? Okay, so there's a little safety cap as well for the launch rod, because there's a guide rod that goes all the way through here. And then there are a few other things that you'll need, and that's normally shown on the side of the box. So this is one of the very popular Estes brands of rockets. So Estes have been around since, I think, the 40s or 50s from America, back through when the space race was very big, and they're still very popular now. So on the side of each starter set, I have a recommendation of the engines. So engines are rated in A, B, C, and they keep going on and on. And the higher the letter, the more power you're going to get. So basically an A has a fixed amount of power, and then a B will have twice the amount of power of an A, and then a C will have twice the power of a B. So it's sort of exponential. And then within there's different number ranges as well, and I'll get into that a bit later. Okay, so it's recommending Bs or Cs, and then obviously B is best for your first launch, because it doesn't go as high as a C, and then when you're really confident you can move on to Cs and get it flying further. Okay, so as a really traditional rocket, you've got the main body of the rocket here. The engine sits in the bottom at this point. You've got your stabilizing fins, and the engine itself is like a little cartridge. It's one use, and then once you retrieve your rocket, you pull out that cartridge which is spent, and you put in a new one for your next flight. On this side, you'll see this is a recovery system, so that when the engine has fully spent its fuel, it has a little delay, and then it'll burn up to a small explosion pocket in the top, which will blast up the top and push the nose cone out. And that's why you can see the nose cone that's separated there from the bodywork. And it's held together with a shock cord, which is a rubber band. And they basically call it a shock cord because as the recovery charge blows out the top, there will be some force which is making the nose cone come off, and the rubber in there just stops it from breaking apart when it gets blasted out. And then parachute gets deployed and it comes back down, so you can get it. Okay, let's have a look inside, and we'll have a closer look at what all the components are. Okay, so if you got, there's your Riptide. Riptide's really nice and easy. There are other ones which have some more interesting recovery methods, but always like the parachute method. It's very reliable and it's quite easy to understand. Okay, so here you've got the parachute that's fully deployed. That generally gets folded up and is placed inside here, and the shock cord is placed inside, and then nose cone caps it all off. Okay. Now in the box, it's got all these major components here. They're all bagged up. I'll pull them out and we'll go through them. All right, so you've got a big bag there. You've got engine. That's a lot there. Okay, let's start off with the rocket. Rocket is the main component of all of this. These ones are already assembled. You can get them in kit form, so that you can paint them and finish them off the way you like. But I think the ready-made ones are a great start for beginners. Okay, so you can see it's basically a very lightweight cardboard tube. You may be able to see all the way through. See if I put something a bit lighter color under there. There you go. So a little hole there. So at the bottom, there's actually another tube which holds in the cartridge of the engine. And you've got some fixed fins. You need the fins for stability. Keep it going straight as it's going up. On this side, you'll see there's a couple of guides. That's where the guide rod will go through. Okay, so it's going to slide through the guide rod, And that's quite important because you're basically going to be firing this towards the breeze so that it comes back straight. And that's the back end. So this is where the cartridge gets fit inside. There's a shock cord. So the shock cord is a shock cord simply because it's elastic and it will take the shock. Okay, and basically the shock is going to be, once this is all loaded up, you also have a parachute inside. The parachute is attached to this point. So that all gets hidden inside, and then when it's pressed together, it's like that. And generally in those kinds are quite a loose fit because you don't want that to be tight, otherwise it will never come apart and it will just fall down to the ground. Okay, so a nice loose fit. Because as you imagine, as you're flying, the force is going to be pushing that inside anyway. Okay, so that's what the rocket looks like basically. All right, let's move that aside. And we come to all the launching components. So you got your launch pad here. So these are the legs for the launch pad. You got 3 legs. You got this sort of bayonet fitting mechanism here. So it's easy to pull apart for storage. You got the hub there, which is where all the legs connect. Actually, if we just undo this, it's got another component in it for the launch pad. Okay, this bit here is the safety cap for the rod, and I'll show you what that does in a moment. Let's just get off this tape. Okay, so that's the hub for your launch pad. Inside here, there's little markings. You've got a wing nut here. This is so you can adjust the angle of your guide rod. Your guide rod gets sandwiched inside. It's got 2 diameters here for 2 different sizes of guide rod. You use the thinner one to start with. Now the bigger one is if you want to use this launch pad for larger size rockets, which need a thicker and sturdier guide rod. Okay, so simply put these together by pushing the legs into place. So there's another bit here, which we'll just pull out. Okay, and just like that, you can see how wide it is. So this gives you a lot of stability, like so. From there, we've got our guide rod inside here. All right, so we'll just pull this apart. Make sure you keep all the caps. The caps are protected when you get it in storage. And you'll notice that there's a central rod. That's the central rod, and it's got little, I guess, pins already connected inside, and they will slide into the other ends of this rod. This end? Yep. So that'll be a tight fit. Like so. So it's really long. It's probably about 1 meter long, I guess. A bit hard for you to see, but, and this we just attach inside here. Okay, so if I just loosen that off, all right, you see that this can actually change angles, because if you've got very strong wind, you want to launch this very tight against the wind, so that when the rocket comes back, it'll be guided by the wind back to roughly where you are. Okay, and just tighten that up with a wing nut. Okay, so it's locked into place now. Okay, you can see there, like so. Now from there, we're going to put on, actually I might just shorten this so it's a bit easier for you to see. All right, so I've just taken the top 2/3 off. Still got a little bit in there. Now, to mount up the engine on here, I should say the rocket, we've got this adapter unit. This just slides over the top of the rod. And then you've got your blast plate. Okay, so blast plate is a piece of metal plating, and it just slides over the top, then onto that adapter. Okay, so you can see it right there. So this is where the bulk of the propulsion is going to hit, and the blast will be deflected outwards, but it'll still be pushing against the plate so that the rocket can launch forward. It's really important because everything is plastic here. You don't want any of that burnt, otherwise you may have some issues. Okay, so that's just loose, it just floats around, which is absolutely very fine. And then we've got, these are the guides here, which I showed you before. They're mounted inside the rocket, and these just slide over the rod. Like so, and just sits in place. So you can see how the rocket, oops, that's all loose, that's the way it's meant to be. You can see how the rocket just sits there, ready for launching. Okay, so that's all the launch pad all set up. Now, what else have we got here? All right, so let's just take this off, move this aside. All right, so we've got the little cap here. So this little cap is for the launch rod. Now just imagine this was full length. Do the same sort of thing, because with the rod, it's very difficult to see and you don't want to poke yourself in the eye. So you can actually just put this on top. And it's got a little streamer on it as well. So it's easy to recognize that it's still got the cover in place. Just so you don't poke it into things and hurt yourself. Okay. All right, so that's another one safety mechanism. And then in this packet, we have the parachute. Okay, so the parachute I'm not going to unfold, but it's very important that the parachute is folded loosely, a bit like the way it is. You don't want to scrunch it up really tight, because if you scrunch it up really tight and you try to put it in this little tube, if it gets stuck, then it's not going to come out properly and you're not going to be able to retrieve your rocket correctly, because it's just going to fall to the ground very quickly. So this will just be, you just unwrap that and you just tie it onto this particular end here where the shock cable is. All right, so we'll keep that aside, talk about in a sec. All right, we're going to rocket, and then we have our launch controller. Okay, launch controller is very important. Okay, so you got the warning label. You should never take off the warning label. You always need that there to remind yourself on what you're meant to be doing correctly. Now you need some batteries to power the launch control unit. Now with these particular ones, I've got a feeling, are there 9 volts in these at the moment? Because they were using some AA's at one stage. It's interesting that they don't say on the box. They usually do. All right, we're checking the manual in a sec, which is just here. There should be it. Launchpad 2 instructions, here we go. All right, that's the construction. Yep, gone through all that. Now this is how to actually use it. Okay, so this uses AA batteries. Now with the controllers, it's best to use the best AA batteries you can get. Don't get the really cheapy carbon types. Get good quality alkalines, because there's a high voltage that you need to maintain a really reliable launch. Okay, so you need 3 1.5 volt batteries. It does say use alkalines only and don't mix old and new batteries. Okay. All right, so you just need to unscrew this, put your batteries inside, and then you have your launch controller. So what you have here is, this is the safety key. So you won't be able to launch anything until this is connected. And that's just so you don't accidentally push the button when you're trying to set it up. You don't want that, you don't want the rocket right in front of your face when the engine's going off. Over here, there's a very long length of wire. So long length of wire so that you can have it very far away and you remotely activate the rocket. So you just need to take the rubber band off, unravel it, and just stretch it out as far as you can. These particular alligator clips are used to connect up to the igniters on the engine. Okay, so engines, you'll need to get them separately. Now, engines come in packets of 3s, and you see that they're tubes there, and inside you can see the propulsion. That's the powder which is going to be ignited. And inside the small hole, this is actually the propulsion end. This small hole holds an electronic igniter, and it looks like a little match with a couple of small wires. Okay, so it's like the match head goes inside, the wires are bent either side, and then a plug is pushed into there so the igniter doesn't fall out. And that's where each one of these connectors is connected each side of the loose wire. So the loose wires are going to hang out like this, like my fingers, and then you connect these to each end. Okay, so you can see how simple the cartridge is. So the cartridge gets the igniter pushed in, the plug pushed in, wires separated, then this is just pressed into the base of your rocket. You put your rocket onto your launch pad, which is right there, and then these will be connected to the 2 wires of the igniter. Okay, so once you've done that, now you're pretty confident that it's not going to launch by itself because you still have the key out. So you'll be laying this out and walking away from your launch pad. And then when you're actually far enough away and you're ready to launch, that's when you put in the key. So you give a bit of warning to everyone, push in the key. So what this key is going to do is complete the electrical circuit. And then when you push the button, the electricity from your batteries is going to go through the wire into the igniter. The igniter will burn and then fire off your rocket engine. And as it flies out, that's why the alligator clips are smooth. So as it flies out, the wires that they're connected to will slip off and it'll just keep going. So this isn't fully attached. You don't want these wires attached as it's flying. It's not going to be very good for anyone. All right, so that's basically the method and all the components that come in the box. But I think we need to talk about the engines and how different engines work. So this particular rocket recommends B size or C size engines. Okay, so you got, it recommends B44, B64, or C65. So earlier, you remember I talked about the powers, so the ratings on the letters. So we've got B's here, recommended B's to start with, and then C's are next. Okay, so C's will actually have twice the propulsion of the B. So you can imagine it's going to fly a lot further. So you start off with the B until you're quite comfortable with what you're doing. Now the numbers indicate the power. So out of the B range, this is a B6, and B6 is the most powerful out of the B range. And then there's a dash and then another number. So the last number is actually the delay before it fires off the recovery charge. So if you can imagine, like I showed you before, that the small hole here, this is the propulsion end, and this part here, see how it's sort of open there, that's the recovery end. So basically what happens is, it's probably easier to sort of visualize from here. So this is where all your propulsion is coming. So your igniter's gone in here, it's blasted off. This is all the propulsion coming out this way. And as it's doing that, it'll be slowly burning up to a point up the top for the recovery. So when it actually stops propulsion, it'll take, well, this particular one's a 4. So that's going to be a 4-second delay before the recovery chute. Okay, so as this rocket is still free flying with its original momentum, it's going to take 4 seconds for it to burn all the way through, and then your recovery charge up the end is going to blast upwards towards the cone. And this blast is what's going to push out the cone and release the parachute for it to come down. Now, as you can imagine, with the blast, this is basically the same pyrotechnics or explosion that's pushing the rocket engine. So between the propulsion charge and the parachute, you need something as a buffer so it doesn't actually burn the parachute. And between there, you're going to use wadding. Okay, so the wadding is something that you need to get as well. Wadding comes in a bag like this. You've got quite a lot of sheets. There's 72 sheets, and most of the time you'll use 3 sheets per flight. As you can just see there on the illustration, how the 3 sheets have been pushed out as the recovery charges come through. So basically you load up the tube. So as you can imagine, the engine is only going to go up to here, and then your parachute is going to be mounted close to the bottom of the nose cone. So you need the 3 crumpled up bits of wadding just to sit in here. And as you crumple up, you just want to make sure that as you push them in, they don't feel too tight, because if it's too tight, the propulsion charge won't be able to push them all out and your parachute might still get stuck in there. So that's the other thing that you need, recovery wadding. And hence 72 sheets, because there's a good chance you may lose some of this. If you're lucky, you might be able to find some and reuse it. But it's quite a bit in there. It's very thin tissue, flame resistant. Okay. Now, as I was talking about the powers, so we've got the B and the C. So this one's a 4-second delay for the recovery charge. It means that after it's fully launched and the engine's depleted, it'll free flight for 4 seconds. So it may be gliding like this, and then before the chute comes out. Now with the C, this particular version has got 5 seconds delay. So it's going to be free flying for another 5 seconds before it comes down. So that means it'll be going up a little bit higher, free flight. And it also means that the rocket would have slowed down a little bit. So there may be a little bit less shock on the whole system when the recovery chute comes out. Okay, and so you can actually visually see the differences between a B and a C. So the Bs and the Cs actually use the same diameter engine. Okay, so the cartridge is the same size. It's the amount of charge that's in it which differs. So you can see this one here, you can actually see all the way inside, and on a C, the charge is packed all the way to the end. So you can imagine how much more power you're going to get there, and that's how it gets its double the power. Okay, so what have we got there? So we've got, we'll go through it in a summary again. We've got our rocket here. Now we've got our parachute. Parachute just needs to be attached to this anchor point where the shock cord is attached. So we'll do like so. We've got our wadding. So our wadding, 3 sheets of this, gently crumpled. You push in 1 at a time. So 1 in there, 2 in there, 3 in there, just loosely. So that should fill in this sort of gap here. The parachute goes inside. And then your shock cord is stuffed inside with the nose cone. Just like so. And then that's your rocket assembled. And then it's getting a cartridge out of your packet. Now the igniters and the plugs that are actually in there, you may be able to see that this particular plugs are a purple color. And just like that. And there's igniters in there too. So igniters do look like a little match head with 2 really thin wires on it. So the igniter goes inside, you push it in as deep as you can, and then you fold the wires out the sides. Plug is pressed in to keep it all in place, and then your cartridge with the igniter is pushed into the base of your rocket. And then from there you can start preparing, put it onto your guide rod there. Okay, so we've got that all attached. And then you have the 2 wires hanging out the bottom here. So that's where you get your controller. Got the controller there. Make sure that the safety is out. Okay, so that's very important. Safety is out. And then we've got the 2 leads. Connect these to the bottom of the rocket. So there's 1 for each of the igniter wires. So once that's attached, unravel this to the point where you're quite far away from your rocket. So it's a nice safe distance away. And then when you're ready, so you got your 3 batteries already inside. Get your safety. Push it in. And then when you're ready to launch, just press a button. Electrical current will go through the wires to the igniter. Igniter will catch a light, set off the engine charges, and just fly off. Off you go. Then after flight, you're going to have your ejection charge. It's going to push all the wadding all the way up here. It'll push out nose cone. Nose cone will pop out. And then you've got parachute will pop out. And then this will all glide back like so through the air with the parachute. And then when you recover this, you just put in another charge, go through the same procedure, off you go. Now with this particular launch pad, this will be able to launch pretty much all the commercially available rockets designed for hobby use. If you're going to go into more professional, larger engines, once you go into Fs, Gs, you can go higher than that as well. You'll need to be part of a specialist club to be able to use those. Now, just as a warning as well, you'll need to check with your local jurisdiction. Each state has got different laws about flying rockets. Some states only allow you to fly rockets if you're part of a club. So please check that. You'll be able to find that on a website. I'll have that on the link below for you to check out. And there's also certain safety guidelines to follow, because these can go very high. There's a ceiling limit. You can't go too far. And also you can't fly near airports, because if these go anywhere near a plane, they can be quite dangerous. So make sure you look out for that too. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. The launch pad itself, you can reuse that. So if you do lose a rocket, which can happen from time to time, it's easy just to buy another kit, build it up, and use your existing launch pad. Same with your controller. Controller will last pretty much forever. And then with parachutes, occasionally you can have mishaps where they do burn a little bit. You can get spare parachutes as well. And then of course, you need your wadding. Wadding, you need, it depends on the rocket itself actually, but generally use 3 pieces. So you go through that, that's a consumable as well, and then you've got your engines. So you generally get 3 flights per box. And then there's different power ratings as well. So there you go. So there's my summary and introduction to flying model rockets. So get yourself one of these starter packs. That's the easiest way to go. Look out for the different designs. I think the parachute version ones are the easiest ones to get together, and especially the pre-made rockets as well. So there you go. This particular one is the Estes Riptide, but Estes do make quite a lot. So if you like, just check the website, you'll see the full range there. But I hope that gives you a better idea of how they work.